Tractors revolutionized farming, but some features were dangerously flawed. From deadly power takeoffs to rollovers, these risks cost lives. Stick around to see the worst offender. Let's get into it. 1. The flywheel hand crank. Starting a tractor used to be a dangerous job. Before electric starters, farmers had to use a flywheel hand crank to start their machines. The problem? If the engine kicked back, that crank could snap back violently, breaking arms, or worse. The Fordson Model F was notorious for this, causing so many injuries that hospitals became familiar with Fordson arm. Many farmers would wrap the crank with rags or use other unsafe makeshift methods to avoid injury. The force of the recoil was strong enough to dislocate shoulders, break fingers, and even knock people unconscious. Some farmers even resorted to kicking the crank to avoid using their hands, but this often led to dangerous slips and falls. Eventually, safer electric starters replaced this hazardous method, preventing countless accidents on farms. 2. Unshielded power takeoff. The power takeoff, or PTO, was a game changer for powering farm implements, but early versions had a deadly flaw. They were completely unshielded. Farmers or their clothing could get caught in the spinning shaft, leading to horrific injuries. The John Deere Model A was one of many tractors with this issue. Loose-fitting clothing or a moment of distraction could mean severe injury or even death. Some reports describe workers being pulled into the mechanism within seconds, leaving no time to react. Operators who tried to jump away often suffered even worse injuries as they fell into the moving parts. It wasn't until later that PTO shields and emergency shutoffs became mandatory, drastically reducing fatalities and making farm work safer. 3. Narrow front-end tractors. Narrow front-end tractors, often called tricycle tractors, were built for maneuverability, but they came with a deadly risk: rollovers. On uneven terrain, these tractors were shockingly easy to tip over, crushing operators beneath them. The Farmall Model M was a classic example. Many farmers lost control while turning at higher speeds or driving on sloped terrain. Some drivers even fell victim to rollovers on seemingly flat ground, simply by hitting a small rut or hole in the field. The risk was so high that some companies tried adding weight to the front axles, but this only provided minimal improvement. As rollovers became a growing concern, engineers designed wider front-end models that offered more stability. Farmers eventually moved toward wider front ends and rollover protection systems, ROPS, to reduce the danger. 4. No roll bar or ROPS. Speaking of rollovers, for decades, tractors had no rollover protection at all. If a tractor flipped, the driver was at the mercy of gravity. The Ford 8N and early John Deere 4020 models were used before ROPS became a safety standard. Many farmers tragically lost their lives in rollover accidents that could have been prevented with simple safety measures. Some operators attempted to jump from their tractors when they felt one tipping, but this often resulted in fatal injuries as the heavy machines landed on them. Stories of experienced farmers being killed in slow-motion rollovers became all too common. Even today, many older tractors still operate without ROPS, putting operators at risk. Today, ROPS saves thousands of lives, but tragically, many farmers still use older tractors without them. 5. Hydraulic brakes that failed under load. Tractors often carry or tow massive loads, so they need reliable brakes. But early hydraulic brake systems were known to fail under pressure. The International Harvester 1066 was a powerful machine, but farmers quickly learned that under load, the brakes could fade or fail completely. Brake failures on slopes or while hauling heavy trailers resulted in dangerous runaways. Some farmers resorted to downshifting as a last resort to slow down, but this wasn't always enough to prevent crashes. In wet or muddy conditions, braking became even more unpredictable, increasing the chance of accidents. Improvements in hydraulic systems and dual braking mechanisms helped fix this issue, making tractors safer to operate. 6. Unbalanced three-point hitch systems. The three-point hitch was a revolutionary invention, but early versions had a flaw: poor balance. If the weight wasn't distributed properly, the front wheels could lift off the ground, causing the tractor to tip backward. The Massey Ferguson 35 was one of many models that suffered from this risk. Sudden load shifts or improper weight distribution could cause the tractor to rear up unexpectedly. Some operators tried to counterbalance the issue with front-end weights, but these makeshift solutions weren't always effective. Engineers later improved weight distribution and stabilizers, making these hitches safer and preventing dangerous tipping accidents. 7. Gasoline tanks near hot engine parts. Believe it or not, some early tractors had fuel tanks dangerously close to hot engine parts. One spark or a small leak could mean disaster. The Oliver 70 had a particularly risky design that put the fuel tank in an exposed location. Engine heat combined with fuel leaks made these tractors ticking time bombs. Some farmers even reported seeing flames near their fuel tanks after prolonged use. Eventually, manufacturers placed tanks in safer positions and added fire prevention measures to reduce these deadly risks. 8. Steering systems prone to sudden failure. Imagine working a field when your steering suddenly gives out. That was a real risk with some early power steering systems. The Case 930 had issues where the steering system could suddenly lock up or lose control. A sudden loss of steering could cause the tractor to veer off course or roll over. Some operators had to wrestle with malfunctioning steering wheels while navigating rough terrain. Improved hydraulic designs and fail-safes have since made this issue much less common, but it remains a scary part of tractor history. 9. Dead man's seat, no operator presence system. Today, most tractors have an operator presence system, meaning if you leave the seat, the machine stops. But in the past, no such thing. Tractors would keep running even if the driver fell off, leading to horrific accidents. Many tragic incidents occurred when drivers were thrown from their seats, only for the tractor to continue moving, sometimes running them over. The Alice Chalmers WD-45 was an example of a tractor that lacked this now standard feature, putting operators at constant risk. 10. Exhaust pipes right in the driver's face. Finally, let's talk about something that might not seem deadly but was a serious health hazard: tractor exhaust pipes directed right at the driver's face. Breathing in fumes for hours led to chronic health problems. The John Deere 720 diesel had an exhaust setup that wasn't ideal. Farmers who spent long hours in the field suffered from headaches, lung issues, and long-term health risks due to prolonged diesel fume exposure. Eventually, pipes were repositioned and cabs were introduced to protect farmers from toxic fumes. Thankfully, tractor safety has come a long way. But if you're still using an older machine, make sure you know the risks. Which of these dangers shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible stories from farming history.